Hey, what's going on, YouTube? This is episode one of poker tutorials on my channel. The game we're going to be learning today is Texas Hold'em, which is basically two-card poker. So, what you see here on the board are hole cards. For example, this will be one player's hand, and then this would be the player sitting next to you, right? Then you also can see I have the chips, the deck, and then the dealer's board. And we're going to get a little more into that right after this. Now, the first thing you need to understand before you can even start playing poker is card rankings. For example, the number one hand you could possibly have is Royal Flush, second straight flush, third four of a kind, fourth full house, fifth flush. Now I'm going to go a little more into detail on what that actually means. Royal Flush, for example, like I said earlier, is the number one hand you could possibly have. So if you have a hand like this, I suggest you go all in. A Royal Flush consists of, well, let's see how they explain it. It's 5 cards of the same suit in sequence, ace high. Now let me try to break that down into simple terms. So for a Royal Flush, the ace is the highest card. Then after that in sequence comes the king, queen, jack, and 10. Now you can see that's 5 cards, right? So I'll go a little more into detail, but I want to keep moving on. Second on the list is straight flush. That's 5 cards of the same suit in sequence. Now, you see as the example they have is diamonds. And it's in sequence 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Simple. Now we're going to go into 4 of a kind. And 4 of a kind kind of explains itself. It's 4 of a kind. Now how they explain it is 4 cards of the same rank and 1 odd card. Basically you're going to always have 5 cards. So the 4 of a kind, the example they gave is 4 tens. And the odd card is a 7. So your 4 of a kind is 4 of tens. Now the 4th ranking hand on the list is full house. It's 3 cards of one rank, triple, and 2 pair of another. Triple basically means trips. And their example, they have 3 jacks. And the pair is a pair of 8s. So when people say trips, it means 3 of a kind. As you can see, they have the 3 jacks and the pair is the set of 8s. Now let's say, for example, you have 2 jacks in your hand and a jack on the Dillards board. You would basically have a set of trips. The only way it would be a full house is if you had a pair to go along with it. And their example is a pair of 8s. Next on the list is a flush. 5 cards of the same suit, not in sequence. So what this basically means is there's going to be 3 cards on the board, right? Their example is hearts. If it's 3 hearts on the dealer's board and 2 hearts in your hand, you automatically have a flush. It doesn't have to be in sequence, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if we go back to straight flush, you can see a similarity, right? Because of the word flush. But when it's straight in front of it, that means it has to be in sequence, meaning 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. Now moving on to the different hands you have is the straight, 3 of a kind, 2 pair, 1 pair, no pair or nothing. and that's basically called high card. So for straight, you have 5 cards in sequence, not of the same suit. So basically, as you can see, they have 7, 8, 9, 10 Jack, which is in sequence, but they're not all the same suit. So that will be the sixth highest hand you can have. Then you have 3 of a kind, which, like I was telling you guys earlier, people don't actually say 3 of kinds. It's going to be called trips. And you can see they have 3 queens, for example. So if someone says, for example, I have trip queens, that basically means they have 3 queens. It's going to be 2 in their hand, which is their hold cards, the one they're actually physically holding in their hands. And then it would be 1 queen on the Dillards board. But I'm going to get a little more into detail on that later. Then you have 2 pair. 2 cards of 1 rank, 2 of another rank, and 1 odd card. So 2 pair, the example they give is a pair of 4s and a pair of 9s. So therefore you have 2 pair because you have a pair of 4s and a pair of 9s. 2 pairs, very simple. Then you have 1 pair, which basically means 2 cards of 1 rank and 3 odd cards. So as you can see, the odd cards is the 3, 7, and 9, and the only pair you have are the 5s. No pair or nothing, ranked by the highest value card. So what that basically means is if there's no pairs on the board, there's no flushes, no straight flush, you will basically win the hand by the highest value of the card. So if you had the ace of diamonds, you would win with high card. Now moving on to the Dillards board. Now this is the Dillards board. This is where it gets very interesting and where chips and position and everything come into place. As you can see now, it's empty and everyone's hand has been dealt. Just imagine these are all people at the table. So starting here, right? This is player 1. Then it goes to player 6. Now let's say, for example, I'm player 1, right? And I have king 2, not of the same suit. Player 2 has ace king. Player 3, queen 6, 4, jack deuce, 5, queen 6, 6, jack 5. Now let's say I was player 1, for example, right? I would go over to my chips and I would technically be small blind. And player 2, which is right here with ace king, would be big blind. So small blind would have to say, let's bet, okay, this is going to be $1. I would bet $1. Then player 2, which is big blind, would have to bet $2. So I'm small blind, this is big blind, and player 3 is something called under the gun. And player 3 has queen 6, which isn't really a good hand, but you never know what can happen. Now, it's up to under the gun. He has queen 6. Now, he could call the $2. He could raise. So if I was player, let's see, if I was player 3, I might be a little bully here. I might have more chips than all the other players on the table. So I would do something called raising. So it's $2 to call, but I'm going to choose to raise instead. I'm going to bet $15. So player 3 just bet $15. All the other that scared all the other players. So they're gonna do something called folding their hand to the dead. So basically, they're out of this round. They all folded. Now, since Under the Gun decided to bet $15, it goes back to small blind, which is me. So first thing I'm gonna do is look at my stack, look at what I betted, and see the potential of my hand. Now we have King Deuce, which is really not a good hand because pre-flop, I don't have a pair and I'm not suited, meaning basically I don't have two cards of the same suit. So I don't have a pair and I don't have a possible flush. So if I were really sitting at the table playing poker, I would fold. But just since this is a video and I want to make things interesting, let's say I was feeling lucky one day and I said, you know what? I think King Deuce is worth $15, so I'm going to call. So now, as you can see, I decided to bet the $15, the 3 blue chips. So I decided to do something which is called calling, meaning I agreed to the bet. So now it's on player 2 to make a decision. He has Ace King, which is a very good hand to have pre-flop without seeing the board. So what I'm going to do is, if I was player 2, I would say, you know what? It's already $30 in the pot. I'm going to see how far I can go with this. I'm going to do something called re-raising. Now, player 2 has decided to re-raise and make it $30. As you can see now, there are 6 blue chips out there, and each of them are worth $5. Every other player on the board has just decided to call 15. And as you can see, his hand is Ace of Diamonds, Kings of Clubs, which is a pretty good hand pre-flop without seeing the board because you have 2 high cards. Now, going on to player 3, he was the one that did the initial raise to $15. So he's probably wondering now, why would player 2 re-raise me and double it to 30? So he's going to look at his hand. He's going to say, you know what? My hand isn't really all that good. But his pride is probably in the way, and he's going to say, you know what? I'm going to call the extra 15 anyway. So player 3 decides to not put his pride to the side, and he calls the extra $15, and he basically calls the 30. Now it's going to go back to the small blind, which is me, and all I have in the pot so far is 15. I'm going to look at my hand with King Deuce, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to decide to fold. I don't think this hand is worth $30. So basically, when I fold at this point, I'm forfeiting my hand, meaning I don't have a hand anymore, and the $15 that I had in the pot now is automatically going in the pot, the dealer's pot. So it's going to go around again. We're going to stay at 30, and 30 is going to go in the pot from player 2, and 30 in the pot from player 3. So right now, it is, let's see, 60, 70, $75 in the pot with only 2 players remaining. So now, since we got past that and we have the $75 in the pot, what the dealer is going to do is deal out the board cards. And the first 3 cards on the board is called the flop. So now we have the flop, and it cost us $30 just to see these first 3 cards on the dealer's board. So we have a 2, a 5, and a 10. Now, as you can see, they're all different suits. So I would describe this board as something we call rainbow. Rainbow meaning it's all different suits, and it's really nothing that's connecting, meaning like it's nothing in sequence. There's no, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's no anything. But as you can see, there is a 2 and a 5. So let's say you had 3, 4 in your hand, and let's say maybe an ace might pop up. You would have what we call a straight, which is the sixth ranking hand on in the game. Now let's go back to the two players that's remaining in this round. Player 2 has ace king, which is still pretty decent. And player 3 has queen 6, which is pretty bad because he has nothing matching on the board. And player 2, which has ace king, would win off of something we call high card, which is what they call no pair or nothing, ranked by the highest value card. And as you can see, ace king would win. Now, what comes next before you see the next card on the dealer's board is the betting again. So player 2 has ace king. So if I was player 2, I would try to run off player 3, which is called a bluff. And I would bet, let's say, since there's already $75 in the pot, I would bet at least 25. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So player 2 has decided to bluff and bet $25 to scare off player 3. Now, player 3 looks at his hand, he looks at the board, and he's going to do something called calling your bluff, which basically means is he feels like you're bluffing, he feels like you don't actually have anything, and he's going to call just to find out. So player 3 is going to call the $25. Now, since he decided to just call the $25, there is no more action, meaning now the dealer has to flip over the next card. Now before moving on, you can see the dealer has put all the bets into one single pot. And now it is $125 in a pot so far. Now the next card on the dealer's board is going to be called the turn, which is the fourth card out of 5 on the dealer's board. Now, as you can see, the turn card is a 7 of spades, which really makes things very interesting because now there are 2 spades on the board. So let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, another spade will pop up as the last card, which is called the river. There would be a possible flush on the board. And let's see if I can go back to flush. Flush is the 5th hand. 5 cards of the same suit, not in sequence. So since there is a 2 and a 7, and let's say an 8 of spade pops up, and you have 2 random spades in your hand, let's say Jack Queen. That is not in sequence, So it would just be a flush and not a straight flush. Now it's up to player two to decide what he wants to do. Player two is going to decide to check because now he's not certain if he has the best hand on the board just because of the fact that player three with Queen 6 has made every single call this far. And now he might be a little concerned that he might have two spades in his hand. He might have a pair on the board, which will be a 5 on the board, a 5 in his hand, and so on. So player is now that the decision is on player 3. Player 2 decided to check, which means he didn't bet. So player 3 also doesn't know if this is a trap or not, so he's going to decide to check. So now we're going to see the last card, which is called the river. Now, as we can see, the river, which is the last card on the dealer's board, is a king of diamonds. And that makes things very, very interesting because now player 2 has one pair because he has a king of clubs in his hand, which is matching a king on the dealer's board. So he has one pair. And I'm going to go back to the ranking hands, which is 2 cards of 1 rank and 3 odd cards. So now, player 2 isn't actually bluffing. He actually has something. So what he's going to do is make a bet. So it's already $125 in a pot, which is a pretty good pot. So he's going to say, he's going to bet, what would be a good bet? And I would personally bet $50. So let's take out 50. Boom. A $50 bet, which is a pretty decent bet since there's only $125 in the pot. So player 3 is going to say, you know what? I think this guy means business. He actually has something. He's going to decide to fold. So his hand will now be discarded. And player 2 will win the pot of $125. So the pot goes to player 2 with ace and a king. Now, as you can see, player 2 didn't have anything except high card, which is the lowest ranking hand you could possibly have, until the last card on the dealer's board, which is called the river. Now, once we got to the river, he actually had something, which was one pair. And the reason why this is a really good hand because this is the highest pair you could have on this board because the king has the most value out of all the other cards on the board. The second best pair would be, for example, 10. So he did a lot of bluffing. He did a lot of waiting it out till he actually struck gold. Now, since this is the first tutorial, I know this is a lot to take in at once, but I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what it's like to play a hand of Texas Hold'em. And I went over a lot. I went over card rankings. I went over betting. I went over different positions. I went over whole cards. So on my next tutorial on Texas Hold'em poker, which I like to call 2-card poker, I'm going to go more into detail on particular things. But for the first video, I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what it's like to play Texas Hold'em poker. Now, if you're watching this and you're a beginner and you know absolutely nothing about Texas Hold'em, you're going to want to stay tuned because you have a lot to learn. And I would not recommend that you go out and play until you actually fully understand the concept. And this is a very complex game. I bet you're pretty confused right now, but that's normal. I was when I first started learning poker myself. So, player 2 has won $125 with one pair. He has top pair with a pair of kings. So that's going to be it for this first episode of Texas Hold'em tutorial. Stay tuned till next time, and I will go more into detail. See you guys later. Stay tuned. Social love. Hit that like button if this helped you out, and share this video if you know anyone that's trying to learn the basics and fundamentals of Texas Hold'em poker. All right, see you guys later. I appreciate the support. Stay tuned.